In our last video, we covered Joseph Heller's book, Picture This. But what about the one that made him big, Catch-22?
It's an incredible satire, loosely based on Heller's own experiences fighting as a bombardier in World War II.
And it's an incredible novel. But we're not actually here to talk about the novel itself, because this is an adaptation.
I'm Eric.
And I'm Alex.
And this is In Other Works.
The year 1970 sees our first adaptation, the movie, directed by Mike Nichols, who you may know as the director of The Graduate, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, Closer. He's a really incredible director.
Pretty consistently gets amazing performances out of the actors he works with, and this movie's no exception.
No, not at all. When I think of Yossarian, there's no one I see other than Alan Arkin.
The cast in this movie is pretty incredible.
You got Art Garfunkel,
which is surprisingly good. He was great as Nately.
You got Orson Welles as the general.
Yeah, you got a very young Martin Sheen.
Martin Balsam plays Colonel Cathcart.
John Voight plays Milo Minderbinder.
You got Anthony Perkins as the chaplain.
And he is so good in this. I don't think about him as Norman Bates once in the whole movie, which every other time I've seen him in anything, all I think of is Norman Bates.
Even The Trial?
Damn, not The Trial either, I guess.
Yeah, so it's a stacked cast. Everyone's great.
And on top of that, there's some pretty great cinematography. Very near the opening, we get that shot of Yossarian just on the right side of the camera and just the sky behind him and that voice saying, "Help the bombardier, help the bombardier." And I just, like, it's a really simple shot, but I find it absolutely stunning.
But for me, though, the most impressive filmmaking part of it is the editing. Like, this really took the non-linear aspect of the book and just cranked it to 11. Doesn't quite follow the order of the book and actually opens with Yossarian getting stabbed. Even though there's some scenes that aren't from Yossarian's perspective, kind of feels like maybe this whole movie is just kind of a flow of random thoughts and memories going through his head as he's recovering.
It's something that's very effective in the book. And in this, we know that Yossarian is dealing with trauma and going through a breakdown throughout pretty much the whole length of the movie. We don't entirely know why. Like, you don't get the full details of what happened with Snowden until very near the end. And then it's like, okay, everything completely makes sense now.
In doing it, that whole flow, every single scene transition is really cool.
Like, there's the scene when he's dealing with Snowden and they actually do an audio cue where it seems like he hears something and looks out the hole in the plane, and they go into it, and now it's a scene transition. That works really well.
And then the film also takes advantage of the fact that it's of a different medium and uses a lot of visual gags that couldn't be done in the book, but completely fit the tone of the book. For example, one really funny one is the scene with Major Major. There's like a picture that starts off as a picture of Franklin D. Roosevelt, like in his office in the background.
The camera's basically following Major Major as he walks around the office.
Yeah,
right?
So it pans to him. And then when he goes back and it pans back, suddenly it's Winston Churchill. And then he leaves and then he comes back again. And this time it's Stalin.
Yeah, it's pretty hilarious. I think it's probably like a bit of a comment on, you've got all these different leaders who all think they're like fighting for their cause and everything is so important to them. But to the guys on the ground, it's all the same, right? It doesn't matter who the person in charge is. They all have to put up with the same crap.
Yeah.
I think John Voight is very well cast as like this personification of capitalism. Funny but horrifying, the things he does. There's the scene in the plane where Yossarian realizes that his parachute isn't there and there's just a coupon for a share in Milo's syndicate because Milo's got some deal that he needs silk for, so he's taken all the pilots' parachutes.
And that doesn't even happen in the book.
No.
It's a really funny bit.
And there is a bit later on that does happen in the book, and they do it in the movie as well, where he's also taken the morphine, and that's when he's trying to treat Snowden. So it's kind of a more gruesome thing at that point, because he doesn't need the parachute, so he's fine in that one. But here we see the actual implications with him taking the morphine and Yossarian not having any to give this wounded soldier.
It also leads to another major change from the book, and that is that Milo actually directly causes Nately's death.
Because Nately's on the field when Milo has arranged to bomb their own.
In the book, there isn't like any characters that are actual casualties in it, but in the movie, they take Nately's death and put it like in that scene.
And I think it makes sense cinematically for there to be consequences for what Milo does. Consequences for other people, people. Milo never actually faces consequences for everything he's done. It's such a ridiculous situation, but when you think about the fact that IBM supplied the Nazis with lots of machines that they used in the war, apparently an American company, right? And like, it's sort of this imperfect encapsulation of the amorality of capitalism.
There's a lot of scenes. It just does a really good job of adapting the book. It's a great, excellent movie.
I mean, I think they've figured out you can't fit everything in that book into a movie. You've dropped like some complete characters.
Yeah.
Like Major de Coverley are not in this.
Chief White-Hat.
But they managed to keep the core of the story, and the movie encapsulates the core of the story and holds on to that humor that Heller uses so effectively in the book.
It's hilarious, but it also just feels like a Kafka-esque style nightmare of just pure military incompetence and bureaucracy. The incompetence, of course, being like maliciously done with intent.
I would highly recommend this movie, whether you've read the book or not. I think it's a great movie. It's a great satire, and
it's a great adaptation.
And it's a great adaptation, yeah. Our next adaptation, on the other hand.
So 3 years later, I guess because of the success of the television show MASH, which, you know, was based off a recent Korean War movie that then became this really successful show. I guess some jackasses thought they could do the same with Catch-22, and it does not work at all.
I mean, I almost feel like maybe whoever bought the rights, bought the rights to the title and the character names, but didn't get the rights to the actual story. So they made a pilot and it bombed. It's not something you can, rent or find on a streaming service, but it is available to watch on YouTube if you want to check it out.
Terrible quality, but I guess it's shot in terrible quality.
Yeah, I mean, it's made for an old style TV, so the video quality is not great. It stars Richard Dreyfuss. The one thing it does carry over from the book is explaining what Catch-22 is. But other than that, it's a very different story.
So it starts off with Yossarian in a plane being flown by Mick Watt. He's not the pilot scheduled for this flight, and instead he's tied up the actual pilot for this flight and is flying like an absolute maniac, and Yossarian is freaking out.
Eventually, they end up ditching in the ocean. I thought it was going to turn out to be Orr because they ditched.
But no, it was Mick Watt.
Yeah.
And Yossarian, though, a bit before that, we find out he also has a wife at home, which I don't think makes any sense.
He's a pretty young guy. He's
clearly single, though.
He's clearly single, yeah. I don't know why they made that change. They may have had maybe if it had lasted longer, we would have found out why, but it doesn't really. Seems like a weird move.
And he's already done his mission.
He's on his way to Rome. That's why he's in the plane. But he ends up at this base.
And he's forced to receive a medal, something he does not want, because he just wants to go home.
Basically, there's a pilot who was supposed to get a medal. He did not come back from the mission.
Yeah.
So now they have this whole ceremony planned, and they don't have anybody to give the medal to. So because they saw Yossarian pulling someone out of the wreck and helping the people get to shore, they decided he can get the medal.
One of the nurses, I guess, is hot for him because
he's getting a medal.
He's getting a medal. Of course, it all ends with the sitcom joke of the person who was supposed to get the medal returned. So just as he's about to get it for the ceremony, it's taken away from him, and she shoves him aside for no reason at all, really.
Yeah. And we're also just completely ignoring the fact at this point that he is, as you said before, married. He definitely wants the nurse. That kind of sums up the show. Production-wise, there's a lot of shots of planes in front of a movie projection. It's not shot in front of a studio audience, but it does have a laugh track, which doesn't make you feel like laughing. It just makes you aware how unreal everything you're watching is.
Yeah, and I don't think a single element of this was funny.
I don't think neither of us even cracked a smile watching it.
No, we didn't. And it's not just that it isn't funny. It's like when there's a laugh track, I'm not even entirely sure often what exactly we're even supposed to be laughing at.
Oh yeah, there were a few moments like that where I was like, what was the joke here? It's kind of, maybe if you want to watch, see what a sitcom pilot disaster is, it might be worth watching for that, but it's kind of a terrible show that didn't deserve to get picked up and didn't. I'm surprised it aired, to be honest.
I think it was lost media at some point, so I guess it's good that it was found. but like that doesn't mean it's worth watching.
We went from great to terrible to the 2019 miniseries, which is not great and not terrible.
Mid!
But probably a little closer to terrible than great.
Obviously, production design, all of that sort of stuff. It's like a modern adaptation with a clear budget. It looks great. The acting's incredible. All of the technical stuff. Except the editing's not so great. I don't like how this does scene transitions. Yeah. The big problem with this one is that they forgot the funny.
I don't think they forgot it. I think they took it out on purpose.
No, I agree. They decided to play Catch-22 completely straight. They got rid of all the non-linear elements and told a linear story, although the linearity is definitely wrong. For some reason, Yossarian becomes a captain in like episode 4, even though that's like one of the first things that happens.
Because of the non-linearity of the book, the whole death of Snowden is something that happens early timeline-wise, but we don't get the full details of it in the book until near the end, and it sort of explains Yossarian's behavior, why he is the way he is throughout the book. And this one, Snowden's death doesn't happen until near the end. So this is just Yossarian's character. It's not a trauma response. It's just who he is, which I don't think works very well.
I think the main reason why they got rid of the funny and the main reason why a lot of intentions are made, straight up, they took one of the most anti-war novels of all time and turned it into military propaganda. And I don't think I'm really exaggerating in saying that. All of the higher ups are completely whitewashed as characters and like in being presented as like tough sort of guys whose hands are kind of tied rather than like actively being malicious.
Cathcart's raising the missions isn't depicted as something he's doing in an obvious play to try and advance his career. It's just because he's so gung-ho about the war. After Yossarian gets caught being AWOL and Arfi has raped and murdered that young woman. In the movie and the book, there's the whole scene where Cathcart is prepared to let him off and not charge him with being AWOL and send him home. And all he has to do is like Cathcart. And it's like such an ego thing, and it's so absurd and it's so ridiculous. And Arfi just gets off of the murder. Arfi's like, no one's gonna come for me. Like, I kill people every day. What's the difference that I killed this one woman? And it seems like so disgusting, but he's right? Mm-hmm. Like, he doesn't face consequences for what he did. And then in this version, the same deal is made, but the deal is made that he will be let free and sent home if he doesn't stir up shit about what Arfi did and lets it go. So he actually has to do something really terrible instead of just absurdly terrible. That absurdity of the book is like kind of the point, the absurdity of war, and you can see how ridiculous all these people are being. And then this is like a truly rational, it's the kind of thing that you would just see in everyday life of somebody trying to cover something up to try and make sure your organization doesn't look bad and that kind of thing. And it loses the point completely, and it really got under my skin.
One of the weird things it also does with that, they make a lot of the deaths in this just directly Yossarian's fault.
Yeah, right at the beginning, you have the new pilot who comes in and he puts his bags down and says, like, I have to go let them know I'm here. And Yossarian gives him directions on where he has to go. And part of it is like second tent on your right. And then after he leaves, he's like, oh, no, third tent on your right. And obviously the guy doesn't hear him, goes into the second tent and gets sent on a mission where he gets killed. So right off the bat, Yossarian's fault. Then you have Nately's death, which is his fault.
Because they turn him going back around and becoming a captain to this actual tragic thing where because he said we need to go back, it leads to Nately's death.
And it's really overly melodramatic.
So many of the deaths are so melodramatic. Like you compare the movie version of Hungry Joe and McWatt's death, and then you compare it to the miniseries, which they replaced Hungry Joe with Kid Sampson. And it's like, the tones are so different, Jesus. It just plays it so, like, seriously, you know? There's none of that whole joke bit of Dr. Nika not actually being on the plane, even though he's reported as being on the plane. And so people are like, oh, he's dead.
And even though he's standing right in front of them, they're all like, poor Dr. Nika.
That's just gone. And they even make Orr seem like a normal guy. Orr's probably my favorite character in the book. He's seemingly just so ridiculous.
But actually, he's the greatest schemer in the entire world.
Yeah. Just constantly crash landing his plane. Everyone survives his crash landings though, and people are just like, oh, you're just lucky. He constantly just like talks about like stuff that just no one really understands. Yeah, Yossarian just has no idea what the heck he's on about and just dismisses it as being dumb and crazy.
Yeah, and he's constantly telling Yossarian, you should fly with me sometime. You should fly. And he's like, I'm never going to fly with you. You're always crashing.
But it turns out that it was all a part of the plan to crash and row his boat to Sweden.
And the reason he was inviting Yossarian to fly with him all the time was so that he could take Yossarian with him. So not only is that not a part of it, but Orr and Yossarian do fly together because he is so normal. There's no reason for Yossarian not to want to fly with him. And he actually gets Yossarian to bail out, and Orr goes off by himself. He's still doing his plan, but he never seemed like a crazy weirdo in the process.
Yeah. And he also seems like him and Yossarian seem like such tight pals that it's like, wouldn't he have taken Yossarian with him?
Yeah.
It's like, why did they get rid of that element?
I don't know.
Like, it honestly makes more sense for that version of Orr to want to take Yossarian with him.
Yeah. But then going back to things that are his fault, this one actually is his fault in the book as well. When he moves the bomb line, Major de Coverley, they drop the joke of Major de Coverley being so intimidating that no one's ever asked him his first name. So he's just Major de Coverley. And he isn't really an intimidating character in this miniseries.
He's just House.
He goes off to what he thinks is a city that the Allies have captured because Yossarian moved the bomb line, only to discover that it hasn't been, and he gets captured by German soldiers. And then finally, Snowden. Snowden is the new tail gunner.
And I guess because he is responsible for Nately's death in this show, and he was the tail gunner in that, Yossarian is like, hey, don't sit there, there's nothing to shoot at. So he moves him to somewhere else, and that's where Snowden ends up getting shot.
I don't really fully understand the point of all of these deaths actually being somewhat his responsibility.
I think it's all a part of whitewashing the military.
As we said, like, Yossarian doesn't really have any sort of character growth in this. Mm-hmm. He's just the same guy who's desperately trying to get out from the beginning to the end.
They don't have the book's ending at all. It just kind of ends.
One of the key elements of the story is after Snowden's death, part of his sort of mental breakdown, he refuses to wear clothes. In the book and in the movie, he eventually gets over that and goes back to wearing clothes. In the miniseries, it ends with him flying a bombing run naked. He's now accepted his role
as the naked bomber.
I don't get what the message is there. He deals with the trauma by refusing to wear clothes, but because of that, he can now comfortably do his job. Well, it's terrible.
You know what this also weirdly does? I feel like they make Major. It's like they want him to be portrayed a lot more sympathetically than I feel he is in the book. Sure, his dad was a jerk in naming him the way he did. That's kind of it, because most of the stuff he actually does is like terrible and causes a lot of harm to basically everyone and completely disrupts things. The movie didn't adapt this either, but one of the funniest plot lines of the books is the whole Washington Irving thing, that just Major was bored and so decided to sign names differently, and so now everyone thinks there's a spy.
With the movie, you've got to figure out plots to drop. I think it's a great plot in the book, but I can see how it would be one of the things you would cut
in the movie.
In the movie.
Straight up, there's more stuff cut in the miniseries than there is stuff cut in the movie.
Because like there's so much funny, absurd stuff in this book. Because they decided to tell this as like a straight war story, you can't fit those things in. And you know what's weird? My fear before we watched it, it was going to be funny, but the satire wasn't going to work because the performances were going to be over the top. Instead, they turned it into a drama. And I would have rather watched the miniseries I wasn't looking forward to and feared we were going to get than watched what we ended up with.
I would agree. And you know, part of what it is with it all being linear, weirdly enough, it feels like it's less of a story because it's now just all the scenes in order. It just feels like a collection of random scenes that are happening instead of a through line story.
It's really disappointing how much effort was put into this show. The writing isn't bad. Everybody is believable. The lines are well written. But the point of it all, I don't understand. It is still a series about the trauma that war causes.
And because of how anti-war the original story is, like, it's impossible to separate it from that. So even though I was saying that it was military propaganda, it does this weird thing where it's like, you can't get rid of the anti-war stuff because it's Catch-22.
Exactly.
So it's just this ideologically confused thing that's just useless. It is a useless miniseries that does not need to exist. That's a wasted effort on all fronts. And since we already have a great adaptation that does the book justice, what is the point? But the craziest thing though, and maybe it's because a lot of these people who saw the miniseries haven't read the book, this seems to be a pretty liked miniseries.
Well, like we said earlier, it is well acted, it's well written, it's well shot.
If you haven't read the book and you're like, what, this miniseries is great, I think you can understand after everything we said as fans of the book why we don't like the miniseries.
Our advice would be to give the miniseries a pass. The movie, I think, is pretty much essential viewing.
Like, if you're into movies, you gotta watch it. Even if you haven't read the book, the book is still the best definitive option, but like, you can't go wrong with the movie.
I've probably seen that movie 4 or 5 times now, and it always holds up well. So thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, do all those things other YouTubers tell you to do.
In our last video, someone posted a comment to ask why I left to-go stuffed crab apples in my cheeks. But as you can see here, this is a rubber ball, not crab apples. And it's in my hand, not in my cheeks.